post-campaign Q&A. How's everyone feeling? Except for
We all
Cope.
survived, even though
We all
died
know.
Like
times
shit.
along the way.
Cope found some flu on the way to the party.
Mhm.
Or at.
And as per tradition, Michael is muted.
He's probably busy munching on his dinner.
Yeah.
Yes. What you need my input? Yes. Hurrah! Finish the game.
Winner, winner.
What was that
chicken
thing Stan Lee always said?
Excelsior.
Excelsior. That's it. was like-
It says something about us that like multiple of us knew exactly what you were thinking.
No, to be fair, with the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's not the most obscure bit of trivia anymore.
No.
Most people can name more Avengers than U.S. presidents at this point.
I mean, it's still better than what George Martin always says. I'll get to it eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still a little salty about that. I remember being so excited I got the book when it first came out, the last book he came out with,
Mhm.
and then never again.
The best possible way to do it, I think, is the way the Walking Dead author did it, which is just lie about how long your comic's gonna be. He was like, it's gonna be over 300 chapters. It's like, I think they made it to. No, they didn't quite make it to 200. It's just under 200. And when Rick died, it just came out of nowhere.
Wait, Rick dies?
In the comic, he dies at the very end because he's kind of an essential character. The dynamic between Rick and Carl. Rick being the guy who goes by the old world.
Oh.
I shouldn't get into my analysis of The Walking Dead right now because we're doing Gambo's thing. We can save that for after.
Yeah.
We'll have plenty of time.
And there's always the option of taking a 5-year plan and getting so wildly successful that it consumes 30 years of your life.
Speaking of things that took longer than intended, 4-year-long dwarf campaign.
Was it really 4 years?
Yeah.
At least.
Late
Yeah.
2020.
I forget how long we've been playing together.
Yeah.
Considering we started playing, I think when Cope just had his daughter, and now she's what, 12?
9, I believe.
9.
She was
just
born
guessing a number.
She was born the same year as my oldest nephew, so I remember his age, I remember her age, remember her age, remember his age.
I feel like we are on track for her DMing our Kingmaker game one by the time we get to it, right?
Right.
I mean, we'll see. She's currently writing a manual on dragons.
Oh, well.
There you
You're
go.
on that path.
A manual on dragons. I love that.
I didn't even push it. Just loves dragons.
Just casually drop a master manual in her reach.
Is it better or worse than unicorns? Because both of those seem equally likely.
Oh, it's way better. Have you seen these How to Train Your Dragon shows?
Oh yeah, no, I've seen a couple of them. I've seen the movies.
I mean, she loves Vikings and dragons. I mean, she's basically built for D&D.
Well, there's your in. Pathfinder has like 6 dragon books, so.
And no Vikings.
No
they have
Vikings.
the setting, but they never do a story for them.
They have conceptual. They have concepts of Vikings.
So, did anyone have any questions about some behind the scenes stuff from Dammerhall? I have a few little notes here I can share of my own, but
I'm trying to remember. There was a couple questions I had, but I'm trying to
Are
think
we starting at
we
particular
can start on
books
book
or
one
just
and
wherever?
go forward to make it easier.
yeah, we can just start at book 1 or whatever strikes your fancy. Jump around.
I had a question. Did you have any plans if we decided to go the direction of the Nomus city instead of not the town we found, but the actual major city?
No, absolutely not. That was still in the original adventure path, and they just said there's a big gnomish city that other direction, and the way into the fungal jungle was the path forward for the adventure. So if you went off the map in the other direction, I was gonna have to start rapidly improvising.
And then, do you think we could have beaten that giant in the fungal jungle?
Um,
I know what the
At the
CR
ti-
that was.
it was a Fomorian, if you're familiar with those.
Kind of.
Um,
I've heard the name.
yeah, it's like an Underdark giant. At the time, I would have thought no, but now that I have had more experience with 5th edition, probably would have pulled it out. It does like 3d10 damage with one of its club hits.
Oh yeah,
is
challenge rating
bad.
8. We probably could have done it.
Yeah, you probably could have done it.
At the time, it would have been a challenge, I think, but I think
Top out
Yeah,
level
you're
5 at that point.
Yeah, you were level 5 at the end of book 1. So if you had done it right before you had went to the Drow Fort, I'm confident you would have been able to pull it out. You know, maybe someone
I
would have
almost
got
feel,
this, but
I almost feel like
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I almost feel like I don't know what challenge ratings are for 5th edition, but the Pathfinder challenge ratings are almost like if they are playing with any degree of strategy, turn it all the way up to the very hard, which is like +3 or something, +3 or +4.
Yeah.
in my experience, at the end of this, 5th edition challenge rating is only listen to it if you're playing with people who have just absolute random gunk characters
or have no
And-
idea what they're doing.
and have no cohesion whatsoever. You know,
Um,
you're playing an orc wizard who with a 10 intelligence, then you follow them in CRs.
Yeah, action
That's-
economy alone tends to mean needs to be at least an equal number of critters.
Yeah, that's what I was going for with the final boss there.
What elements were your complete concoction, and as apart
Yeah.
from what was in the module already? Because this was the most completed one, right? The
Book 1 was
I
actually
mean,
I think one of the only ones
Book
done.
1 and then book
Yeah.
2 was technically written by them, but it also was had some just weird blank spots. I'll get to that in a second. Book 1, that one was pretty complete, and I played it mostly by the numbers. There was only just a few areas where I changed it. The Mushroom Tower, where you guys met Caliburb, that was an entirely different thing. Caliburb was my own insert into the plot. It was some sort of extra-dimensional outsider merchant that lived there before that connected to nothing and explained nothing. It was just kind of weird.
So you
Crazy
you
wizard.
took a filler character and made them a end game like major NPC, right? That's awesome. I
Yes.
love it. That's
Yeah,
great.
Can I just say, while we're getting started with just the topic of what you made and what Fire Mountain Games made, I'm assuming this will go up on the channel. This is also a public call out for Fire Mountain Games for being goddamn scammers, taking people's money and running like bastards. And you know they're gonna see it too because they probably look up their own shit all the time. So I hope they do and they realize they're
And if
bad
you're
people.
someone from Fire Mountain Games and you want to dispute that, by all means, send us a message. Come on to the show. We could really use the publicity.
Or if you want to save your good name, just contact Gombo and buy all of his shit and send
I hope you
your
finish it
books.
and Gombo sues your ass.
Copyrighted now, bitch.
How about give him Michael's number instead?
Yeah, because this was book 1 and 2 were Throne of the Night by Fire Mountain Games for what little they did of it.
Mhm.
We had previously played their what was it, Way of the Wicked before we started recording stuff.
So at that point, when we were in book 1, did you already have an idea for Caliburb to be such a long running and major like background for the overarching campaign?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Because in book 2 there was the whole dinosaur skeleton and the elemental rift.
Mhm.
And in the original book 2, the wizard that created the elemental rift and the necromancer that created the dinosaur skeleton guarding the gap were two different unrelated characters that never were named and never appear in the story. So when I read that, even before we started, I'm just like, well, I'm already replacing this guy. I'm just going to wrap all these up into one character.
So your MacGuffin became like a major NPC even more. Like, all right, we're just gonna tie all these loose threads just to make them make sense because we got to do something. And
I think in exploration there's always like a firm line to walk between you want to have some extraneous details that don't connect to the A plot because that makes the world feel alive. But if you have too many just like this is some really weird region specific movers and shakers, and you're like, yep, that connects to nothing.
Yeah. And I think especially since Caliber, especially upon the first introduction of just the sheer personality of his insanity, just turns our king into a frog and then just acts casual about it, right? So every time he appeared, it really helped really get us invested with where he was in the story. Just every step of the way he was there, apart from time we're just waiting to call him.
Did we interact with him ever between the time with Vendrak where we called him in the first meetings?
Oh, you
Not
never
directly.
You never directly interacted with him. You kept finding things they had left in his wake. So that there was that. Let's see, other stuff I added to book one. You guys remember that the Isle of Three Horns, they called it? It was the island out in the middle of the lake in the fungal jungle with the mudslide gnome city. So that was in the book. In the original book, what it was that there was just a random observatory you could go to where I think they said a hag lived there, but the main boss of that was you're just supposed to go in the town square and there was like a froghemoth that you would fight, which is a cool monster. But the 5th edition version of that is way above par what a couple level 3 or 4 characters could handle at the time. Because it was definitely stronger than that giant had going around. And I kind of wanted to have
session.
Yeah,
was the submarine part of it?
The submarine was a part of it. The observatory dungeon was my addition. Just a nice little side optional dungeon crawl.
That was the one filled with like the vines or whatever.
Yep, the vines, and it had a bunch of traps, and you fought a basilisk up at the top. I still love telling the story about that one particular dungeon to friends because I love it was Richard as Fergus went into a room and I describe the ruins and how there's a chest in the corner. And he goes, okay, I'm gonna just go up there and open the chest. And I describe how he grabbed it. His hands got stuck and eyes came out of the chest because it was a mimic.
Yeah.
And I always laugh about that because everyone was silent for a second. And then Richard said, did I just fall for a treasure chest mimic? Like the most over the plate use of that monster in the world.
Listen, everyone expects a mimic until everyone gets too cozy and they forget about the mimic.
Yeah.
As their boys like, oh, it's just we expect it so much that we're no longer expecting it, right?
And listen, it is a tried and true tradition. It is always either the rogue or the barbarian that falls for the mimic.
Oh yeah.
And I'm glad you lived up to the role, and we were able to check that off our bingo card.
What
I don't know. Looking back on my side, I think I would have actually chosen to be. I forgot that you could technically make a tiefling a dwarven descent kind of thing. Looking back, I kind of wanted to have made Fergus a tiefling and just be a dwarf tiefling, and then it could have been really awkward for Throne.
I think
you nailed it pretty hard as it was.
Yeah, I did like the dynamic of Thrum and Fergus.
Well, it's really interesting. Then, is it Pathfinder now? You can be a half elf, no matter what race you are.
Yeah, you
can
be
a half race of pretty much anything. I think.
Yeah, they sort of detangled that. And with their revised edition, where they're trying to legally separate from Dungeons and Dragons, Tieflings and Aasimar are mechanically gone. They were just merged in the same thing called a Nephilim, which is just, depending on which racial feats you pick, you're either of infernal or celestial descent, but it's thematically the same thing. They just, making sure that.
Did they come up with a new word for elf that they can copyright?
No, they came up with a new word
or was
for
that
half elf.
D&D?
They came up with a new
Maybe it's
word for half elf and half orc. And then they explicitly in the text say someone of half orcish blood or half elven blood. But it's just like an in-universe word for it.
Yeah.
You're thinking of Warhammer with Age of Sigmar, that their fantasy races all have slightly skewed names, so that way they could copyright literally everything. No, we don't have dwarves. We have Duardin. We don't have ogres. We have ogres with an O. It's a thing.
Quick question about the first battle for the Gnome City.
Yes.
I remember Way the Wicked had like a bunch of tiers of levels of success with how he did in such a battle. So I was curious, I'm not sure if you described it to us when, back when we first did it, but do you recall what like the various tiers were and like which one we got? I think you said we got the highest, but
to my best understanding of from what I read, they didn't have a tiered system for the battle. It was literally just supposed to be a consecutive like 3 or 4 encounters, I think it was.
Oh, okay. So it's
of
not
the
like
battle.
how well we did with that. It's just
right. It's because it's assumed
fighting.
you're just gonna win.
Gotcha.
The only thing I added was at the first battle where you were defending the bridge, I added the gnomes that were like providing archer support as like a meter of how long you can hold there.
Okay.
And I was obviously keeping track of the 100 drow that were supposed to be attacking. And then the only other thing that I did was, you remember Lord Gurney, the guy who was in charge of Fasterval? Well, he was just supposed to be fatally wounded off screen. Right. And I physically put him into the encounter, that final encounter. And if he died there, then that's how he died. It felt kind of cheap. Just like, oh yeah, you know that NPC that you spent all this time convincing? Yeah, he got stabbed off screen. Anyway,
right.
It's because
didn't they do that to make it so you could technically lead the city or something?
Yeah, you would start kingdom building right then.
So that would be your first city.
Yeah, that's what I was going to interject earlier. Was it struck me? It still strikes me as weird that they kind of started city building that early, and then
it's because they complained. I think people complained that they did it too late in the previous game they made.
They did it too late in the previous game. Also, something obviously I didn't do was that the adventure was written so you could either be an all party of dwarves or an all party of drow if you want to do a good or evil campaign. So if you did the all drow thing, you would be conquering the town instead of defending it. There would actually be 5 dwarven NPCs you'd kill at various stages. That would have been the other party. That doesn't happen in this timeline.
What would the final keep have been occupied by?
Oh, the same drow lady. She just doesn't like you. It's like a full Civil War takeover thing.
Gotcha.
Outside of the fact that we just got done with
play that.
It would be a fun.
Our characters we're going against.
It would be interesting. It would be a very Force Unleashed DLC situation. The big issue that I had with that, outside of the fact that I obviously wanted to just run a dwarf campaign, is that it really just, especially in book 2, it keeps shoehorning you towards finding Dammerhall. Like, what is the drowish motivation for this? Like, obviously they said you were exiled from the big drow city, whose name I keep forgetting because it's like 8 syllables. And you want to build up your power to return there and take over. That makes sense. But like, what's the connector to let's go into a dwarven city and take that over?
Thing is, right underneath the dwarven city was the lost drow city.
I have a question,
Did you make all that up?
Definitely some major clout.
Do you have any plot hooks that you were sad that we didn't pick up on?
For not
just for book 1, but in general.
Oh yeah, let me think here.
I know you probably have a few,
yellow guy.
everyone does.
I'm trying to say. Oh, right. The entire optional dungeon you didn't do in book 2. So there was a it was alluded to by a couple NPCs you had met along the way that there was a section of the Elven Forest that was like a dark woods area that used to be the home of the Skizral before the elves drove them out. And it had like this ancient spider temple. It was going to be an entire like spider themed dungeon with like horizontal surfaces. And I had it all marked out on the map where it was. You guys just never went up there. Where it was going to be just the first floor of the dungeon was just the forest outside of it. And I had a bunch of different various spiders cooked up. And at the heart of it, there was going to be like a giant extraplanar spider thing. And there was going to be what was called the Forever Web, which is a web spun by like an extraplanar Cthulhu-esque spider god that connects multiple planes of existence in the area. And that was originally going to be a thing that was going to connect to Deir Amaruk below, is that there was going to be a stranded forever web connecting there. That could have been one of the paths that you could have used to find your way there. But then that plot line just never went down. So I'm just like, well, let's just quantum ogres that out of existence then.
I guess that's a good point to segue into any questions we have in book 2 then, because I think we're pretty much asked any questions we had in book 1.
Yeah, I think the only other thing in book 1 was if you had found the giant slayer in the south. He had a pile of treasure, a couple nondescript magic weapons, and there's going to be some like vague caveman art that was going to be like foreshadowing the stuff below in the end of the book 6. This ancient war between the precursors and the sort of Cthulhu-esque aberrant beings. But yeah, we can segue into book 2.
Yeah.
Well, was the mine that we found where I think Richard died, and then we encountered the drow with the orcs, and he wanted to buy it from us, and we went through. Was there any lasting circumstance that would have happened had we sold it to him?
Fundamentally, no, other than you wouldn't have had him as an enemy with how things went down. I had originally tended that guy to be like a reoccurring NPC that you'd keep bumping into for the remainder of your travels, because you all were razzing me about, we don't have anything do you spend money on. We keep finding treasure. I'm like, all right, here's a traveling, slightly shady, but magical item seller. And he has a reason to be constantly moving around. So we've established that. And this is the guy that you can.
Little did you know we were much too racist for that.
Yeah. Well, it didn't help that his head bodyguard had dwarven, scalps on it or beards. It's like, oh, okay, these are.
So this asshole.
Yeah, I don't know if those are really complaints so much as back pay jokes.
Yeah, I know it is.
That's what it became. Like, I think the first time I said it, it was serious, but after that, I'm like, this is just funny at this point.
Yeah.
Especially once we got to like the pirate place, I'm like, oh look, all our money. It doesn't matter because now we have to earn more money.
And I'm still waiting on my fucking back pay from Dark Heresy.
We'll be waiting a long time for that.
So was
the Administratum takes,
What
was that cave-in to the
make you take the path of walking madness? That was in the original book. That was me sticking to the story. I managed to turn a thrum-based thing out of it. It felt like a little too much of a timed event for me, but I tried to make it the best I could out of it.
I was just curious, was that going to be a no-go path regardless?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that was like, oh, the direct path. Let's take that one, right? Okay. And was the staff and was it the world wound, that elemental that we sealed? Was that part of the original?
That was a part of the original, yes. As I said, that was just a unrelated wizard who did this.
But then you tied it to Caliburn. Yeah.
I
So
tied it
not
to
a
Caliburb
pyramid
as part of his ongoing experiments to try to find a weapon he could use to defeat Encephalon. So, as I said, Encephalon was kind of in the plot the entire time. It's just he wasn't always making his presence known. I think he was. I thought about this for myself. He was a villain that was more for me than for you, which was a good thing because I had fun with it, but also a bad thing because you didn't really get to meet him until like the last fourth of the adventure.
Was he sending messages to, or like giving visions to the two? It was Thrum and
Taskell, yeah.
Thrum and
Because
Taskell.
both of them had visions in their backstories, so that was from.
Did they have any visions once the game started?
No,
Like,
because
no side
Encephalon
message or anything.
would just keep pinging this at people, and then he would watch you from afar.
Gotcha.
This is skipping ahead a little bit, but this is something I had fun with. Is I had a lot of fun detailing for Encephalon what his exact powers were and what his resources were, and sticking with it without being like, "Who DM magic this happens because I say it happens." A lot of big stuff from the final battle. The reason why there was so few people there was because his actual pool of minions was not as big as he was trying to trick you into thinking it was. Because he was trying to lure your army down there. There was actually many periods throughout the story where you guys had significantly more resources than the ultimate villain of the plot. So what his main advantage was is just he had a lot of awareness and a lot of surveillance. So he was constantly trying to trick you guys into thinking that he was a bigger, more pressing force. Like his entire controlling the Drow city thing was bullshit. He just said, "My minion, the Drow Queen," and you guys ate that up.
Like,
well, we were already predisposed for that. I think.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's why he did it. But winding back to book 2, I already told you guys about the how the Rock-Nosed Mine was a dungeon in the original one, but I just didn't really think it was designed well, so I redid it. If you have a dungeon and roughly 45% of your rooms are this is just an empty room, and then it moves on to the next entry, what are you doing filling up page space in your book? Like,
Is that where the yellow goo monster was?
No, Rock-Nosed Mine was the 4-story mine. You fought a ghost at the top.
Yeah.
Then the Cave of Bats, then the Minotaur Maze, and then the Vine Demon at the bottom, which was technically optional, but it was a fun fight.
And how, you said book 2 you also largely played by the numbers, or was that more book 1 and you just started?
I played some by the numbers. I just gave more backstory for things, gave a few more reasons. God, the entire inclusion of the elves on the outside, I really like the idea of having you encounter elves, but the original book just literally did nothing with it. Like if you guys felt like you were ever wandering aimlessly in exploration mode, I'll have you know that I dropped way more hints than the adventure originally said to do. The adventure was really just bumblefuck around and roll on random encounter tables for sessions upon sessions until something happened. I was the guy that's like, so you explore the gnome ruins and you find a journal from an old exploration team who makes mention of an old dwarven mine in the next area. And then you go, haha, so we need to find a mine, So it gave you something to latch onto.
Right. Some sort of direction to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the downfall of hex crawls, it seems, a lot of the time.
Well, I think it's
good.
I was gonna say, well, it's an interesting thing as I've been studying older school D&D, is that the traditional hex crawl didn't have an overarching plot. You wouldn't have an obscured map. You'd roll out an actual finished map of the area, and then it was the players choosing their own objectives. They're like, I want to go to the port city because I want to take a ship up to the magic place, or I collected rumors in the tavern about this dungeon over here. It's kind of very it's a little bit more open world Skyrim style, as opposed to
like a choose your own adventure rather than plot driven.
Rather than plot driven. And when you do it that way, it works super well because then you get to just see the entire world open before you. If I could do it again, I have some better overland travel systems now that wouldn't involve hex by hex me unveiling the fog of war. But live and learn. This was my first attempt.
Also, uncharted territory for us. So
yeah, I'm definitely going to do something hex crawly again in the future. I think I like the idea of throwing a big world map of like a nation or something in front of you guys with a bunch of hexes and measurements, and really letting you choose your own path through the world to get from A to B. I'm going to limitedly do that in Skull and Shackles and Carrion Crown when we get there. Obviously, you're going to see the entire map. But like for Skull and Shackles, you would logically be sailing from port to port, and the longer your voyage is, the more likely that you're going to run into other ships that you can raid. And when you need to travel in like Carrion Crown, Ustalav is an incredibly hostile place. So it can really flavor the journey of, do you want to go through the town of paranoid witch-burning lunatics or the haunted forest with dead bodies hanging from the trees? Like,
yeah.
I seem to notice, at least from my opinion, like I prefer when I'm making a game, I like the ones where from the get-go what your overall goal is going to be. Like obviously, like ours with like Dammerhall and stuff. Like when you were talking about how looking back, you wish you would have made what's his name, the final boss?
Oh yeah, Bendrak.
The ones like I noticed like with adventure paths and stuff for Pathfinder. The ones that seem to be better received are often the ones that from the get-go who the final bad guy is going to be.
Yeah, I have a bad habit of liking a mystery box villain, which is a bad mixture of me liking both action scenes and mysteries. If we were playing a purely like solely focused on a mystery game, who's the murderer, uncovering the cults, then you can get away with the mystery box thing a bit more. That's a weakness I have learned about myself now that I'm working on compensating for. This campaign itself was for me my first attempt to try to compensate for a weakness that I noticed about myself in Dark Heresy, which was I didn't really have a lot of like reoccurring NPCs for you guys to bounce off of. So I really wanted to challenge myself in this campaign to make a small cast of consistent characters that I roleplayed that you guys would interact with.
I think you did well with that for sure.
Yeah, we got like Caliber, we got Ivy. Oh yeah, speaking of book 2, there's a story for Iago, but that was my goal.
A quick question on book 2. That fight as we descended from the fortress into the
the dropping off point.
Yeah, was that the fight how you designed, or did the game design it? Because that was
you were supposed to be attacked at bats at some point. I just took full advantage of the dynamic lighting of you guys being this infinite inky black void, and then you're just flickering, seeing things beyond, and you're unsure of. That the early 2 books, I think I probably did the whole pressing darkness of the Underdark thing the best, at least for my own feeling.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially that descent, that was such a unique sort of situation that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I have to give credit for them for the great jumping off point. They never explained how the drow got shit up and down that. So when you guys said probably use giant bats, I said yes.
Yeah.
They can have their credit when they give those people back their money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget the story on that. I know they took Kickstarter money and stopped putting it down. But,
They released book 1 as like a teaser, and then they got the money and made book 2, and then no one has heard of them for like 5 years or something.
Yeah, I've heard of other Kickstarter stories involving RPGs, but those devs sometimes try to rectify it. Like there's this one game called Wicked Ones, which is like a dungeon keeper style game. or due to financial reasons during COVID and stuff, they couldn't fulfill the Kickstarter. And that guy, to his credit, went, well, my business just folded. Here's all the PDFs we already made for free, and I put the entire game on the public domain. Have fun. I'm like, all right. you know.
Mm-hmm. And with that final jab to Fire Mountain cut and run, on to original content, book 3.
Yes. All right. So I did use the vague outline of some stuff that they had because they had one post that was supposed to be like the overarching story and how the books were supposed to be lined up.
If
and I had
ask,
to. Yes.
Did you know? Like, did you create the BBEGs like Bendrak and like or?
Oh, Bendrak and Encephalon? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like, did either of the first 2 books kind of build up of this is where you're ultimately be going, or was it just contents of book 1 and maybe allude to the next book?
Sorry, rephrase that question. What
so when like Way of the Wicked, they kind of let known that the king and the princess and all that were big figures that you'd be working towards, and just kind of give an idea of the goal of from the GM perspective. So was there any sort of end game stuff that Fire Mountain Games had for that, or were they just more focused on each book being what they did but didn't really develop that sort of end game stuff?
They didn't even really do that. Here is the plot as from one Kickstarter post. Was that after book 2 you were supposed to get into Dammerhall. They didn't even say what caused Dammerhall to fall. They were all just kind of wibbly wobbly with it. The only 2 instances they had was that they did have one bit of art, which was a giant metal golem with a cannon on its arm, which kind of made it in. And you were supposed to team up with a psychopomp. They like work for the goddess of death to stop whatever happened in Dammerhall. And then they never explain what that is. Obviously the psychopomp didn't get in. I had no interest in that, but I'm like, I don't know. I like undead.
Oh, I remember Psycho Peter.
Yeah, I like undead and constructs. Let's go with that. Then you were supposed to go to the Drow City, which I'll explain my thoughts on that later. Then you were supposed to go to the Sunless Sea, which they only described as a series of underground oceans, which I found the idea very striking, but it's interesting that was supposed to be book 5. And then the final one, which they didn't name, they just said go to a dark place and stop ancient aberrations from, and I quote, blocking out the sun to invade the surface, which felt like very much a vampire plot to me.
Yeah, usually they're the ones blocking out the sun.
Yeah, hence why I went with a different thing.
Yeah, I like the directions you went.
Or I think it was
all of this.
It was the original plot of The Emperor's New Groove too, I think, and then they trashed all that and made it a funny buddy cop movie. Anyways, I'm scatterbrained tonight.
But yes, that's why I put the Sunless Sea before arriving at Dammerhall, which I'm divided on. Sometimes I think maybe I should have had you guys get to Dammerhall earlier. Sometimes I think I space out the journey right. But the Sunless Sea was all a unique creation for me. What all the different seas were, what all the different factions were. I had way too much fun in a coffee shop doing sketches and designing how Dinport functioned as a society. We got way too excited about that.
Yeah, and then we're kind of like, maybe we should linger in this pirate port. Although that brings up a question of what would have happened if we hadn't given the Jello the finger for a character that ended up showing up for like 2 episodes and then being swept under the rug.
He would have absolutely gone out, killed Fergus's girlfriend and tried to replace her. His threat was honest. If Fergus said no, he would have just fucked off. He wasn't going to try to fight you guys again. you guys already cut through all of his shit.
Yeah,
and we never found out what happened to him.
Well, as Perketh had told me in the past, it's all right to leave some lingering plot thread stuff just in case. I also would occasionally at times just forget that was a thing I had left out there. There was also going to be a whole subplot thing where if you had killed Bendrak, not sealed him away, but actually just like killed and destroyed him, the original black iron armor arm of his, the one that was actually forged by a god, was going to remain. That was a big part of his power. And Fergus had touched the other one. So it was going to be a whole one ring temptation thing for him. That kind of power to try to draw him into darkness. But then you shoved him in a ball and kicked him to the bottom of a planet. So that problem solved.
Caliburb.
Yep.
So that, I guess, to follow up to where we're currently at in the discussion, had we not dropped Caliburb's name, would he have been a presence in Dammerhall still, or how do you think we would have had the sort of insights that he revealed later, towards the end game story that we did?
He was gonna make himself present in a one way or another.
Okay.
Maybe I would have come up with a reason for you guys to seek him out. Maybe he just would have crashed through your front door one day. That's one of those. I would have done something, but since I didn't need to, I never figured out what it was gonna be.
We opened up that door for you because we invited him in, and we're like, oh, I mean, we did call him here. Well, now we just got to figure out what.
He still never paid his rent.
No, he never paid his rent.
Don't worry, I'm Nolgrim's retirement is basically the debt collection.
Yes.
No debt collector. Knock knock.
I'm here for.
I don't know. Caliburb was pretty old. I think you might owe him some Social Security, Fergus.
I mean, he wasn't technically a citizen if he never paid rent in the first place.
Never paid into it in the first place.
I think he was a citizen before you were even born.
Yeah, he owned land, man.
Okay, so
that's not what makes you a citizen anymore.
He was an immigrant at best.
A little bit of some more behind the scenes stuff. So way back before this campaign even started, before I even decided to switch it over to 5th edition, when I was still like in the early concept stages, and I knew I needed to change some stuff from what they already had stated in the AP. There was going to be a period where this was going to be much more Lovecraftian, because I had gotten a PDF that was like all the Lovecraft gods and stuff from the Cthulhu mythos in Pathfinder or 5th edition rules. So there was at one point on the cutting room floor the idea that instead of the avatars and Cephalon, that might have just been actual honest to God Cthulhu sleeping at the center of the earth. Which, while immensely entertaining, that was kind of, I decided against that because it was a little too deviating from the Tolkien-esque dwarviness.
Yeah.
I felt like Mind Flayer Dragon was landing closer to traditional D&D feel, and that felt better to me.
Yeah, I like the way you did it. There's something to be said about just, this is like the corpse of a god or something, because what are they mining out of this thing, right?
Yeah, and if it was Cthulhu, he'd have to live up to Cthulhu expectations, which means we would all have to die and go insane.
Well, the rules were very nice, where Cthulhu wasn't a monster that you'd battle; he was an environmental encounter. Where it was like every round you would drill 20 d20, and that's how many people he was scooping up with his tentacles and instantly killing. So you'd have to just bop him until he went back to sleep. But part of that is there was another.
Just the phrasing of just got bop Cthulhu until he goes back to sleep.
Just got to get a bigger boat.
Not that kind
Once again, this is super early before we even started playing. Like,
no, I get it. I just like I said, the phrasing of it, I love.
Well, I mean, it definitely takes less than a full level 20 party to make Cthulhu go back to sleep. He got hit in the head with a medium-sized boat once and decided that was enough.
I mean, that is a bad start to the day, to be honest.
So a part of that, as an idea, is the original, once again, before we start the campaign, idea for why Dammerhall fell was that another Lovecraftian entity, once again, I was in a mood. One of my favorites, the King in Yellow, had hijacked the mind of the Dwarven King and had killed everyone and raised it as an undead army. Once again, that didn't make the final cut, but I liked the idea of undead dwarves, and that became Bendrak and him, killing the entire populace of Dammerhall to raise his workers to build his golem army to fight Encephalon. Interestingly enough, while that was the plan for a very, very long time, the ultimate aesthetic I landed on, like the dark, soulless industry with the factories and the melting of the smoke, was actually just a couple months before you guys reached that point.
Oh, really?
I came up with that idea. Before that, it was just going to be good old-fashioned necromancy. But I learned of the Chaos Dwarves from Warhammer, and I'm like, oh man! And then I started building assets in Dungeon Craft just for fun, and it came out just very visually striking. And I think that was ultimately the right call. I think one of my favorite moments for you guys was when you got into Dammerhall and you were exploring the lower mines, and then a minecart loaded with ore passes you. And you're all like, wait, moving mine carts? And then you follow it and you got to the ore depot where it was all the zombies working in production. And I remember you guys being like, oh shit, this isn't just like a Mines of Moria situation. There's a plan happening here. Like
I remember that. That was
we
cool.
dug too deep and we are still digging.
And then we found, and then there were all the lines and like the cable lines or whatever they were,
pipes and all the
steam lines and pipes, and
I love the mental image also of all that grandiose, like classical dwarven architecture, and like someone just took sledgehammers to it and smashed it and put steel I-beams through it, like just pure, only what is necessary, nothing else matters. And that brings us to Bendrak. I would say probably the best villain I've ran as a DM. I feel very strong about Bendrak.
It was definitely, like, especially as far as like reoccurring villains, like, because we bumped into him several times, right?
Yes. Now, a part of that, I think what makes that memory so striking is just how it worked out. It's really hard to make a villain more memorable than brutally killing PC in honest single combat.
Yeah.
That was dice on the table. That's just how it went down. There was no DM smiting. There was no anything like that. It's Nolgrim stepped up. He fought Bendrak in single combat, and you just straight up died and were cast into molten metal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was only after the fight that I remembered, oh, right, I had the vest or the armor that allowed me to, instant move, and I could have fallen back, but I think it definitely added that level of just severity to the situation by the way it played out.
Oh, yeah.
Is that when Nolgrim became Ghost Nolgrim?
Yeah.
Yep.
I did enjoy, like, being the means of Freya getting her mech suit back, though.
So on the note of player death and then getting better afterwards, I would like to rewind to probably the best bit of the Summer Sea that we did was the betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
Oh, my God. It was so
jigless.
good.
Yeah.
So how much of that did you and Cope plan out together?
That actually is a good thing. So my plan was to originally have a cohort join you in each of the books, which kind of succeeded. After reclaiming Dammerhall, I just stopped doing that because the cast was big enough.
Yeah.
There really is a critical mass on NPCs following the PCs around before it becomes cumbersome for a DM.
Yeah. I hear that.
So my original plan was to have Jigless the Bold Triton Bard, be just like, hey, you met him, he becomes your companion character, and then he was going to betray you to the Aboleths. And Cope very coincidentally kicks the bucket at just the right time that I'm like, all right, you want to help me betray the party? And while I think I could have handled that ultimate battle scene where you all got pulled into the depths better, I think we've discussed that in the past. And once again, learning experiences.
Yeah.
Oh, the scene where it was just kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
were
talked
all
about
bound to go down. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we talked about that.
I would like to look up my Skype chat and see what you had asked me. You were like, "Hey, I know. I think you even texted me right when it happened. Like the armor that engulfed Thrum, the rocky stuff, specifically said he cannot swim, cannot move underwater, and so as soon as he fell on, I don't know, the first day in the Sunless Sea, first encounter, something grappled him and pulled him off, and he was gone. And we were just all like, well, he's fucking toast. I think within 2 minutes, you texted me while we were still playing, and we're like, because I said, all right, I'm gonna start thinking about a different character, and you texted me and we're like, hey, I've got an idea. Do you want to work with me on this next character? I was like, oh fuck yeah, oh yes, please.
Yes, because I knew that the Aboleths were down there. Oh yeah, that's a good point to wind back to. But I knew the Aboleths were down there, and they would absolutely scoop up Thrum. So it was a good way to introduce all that.
And get him naturally back in the story rather than he just disappears into the depths forever.
Yes, yeah, a little anticlimactic, and look how that worked out.
Yeah,
Thrum had
sure.
quite the art.
So from the get-go, you had told me. Sorry to interrupt. You had told me the scenario, and you kind of asked, "Hey, are you in on this? Because if you're in, I have to let you in on this other information, which will break some of the story for you." And I was like, "No, totally, I'm in." So you're like, "All right, you're in. We'll work on what your character is going to be later, but here's what's happening. They're the Aboleths, or whatever it was, below the ocean.
Yeah,
they're grabbing Thrum. Thrum will come back, but in the meantime, here's your background on your character and what they're going to be doing," which was super cool. So the whole time I was being Jigless, I knew that Thrum was going to have his shot to come back.
Nice.
But Jigless was your idea, right, Cope? You still created that character?
No. I mean, I built him mechanically.
Yeah, the name Jigless and the art. I ran it by Cope to make sure he was good with playing with that art and that character, and he ended up rolling with it.
Okay, so Jigless was a character you had in mind.
Yes, he was going to be a cohort that was going to portray. So another great fun fact about the Aboleths is that they were actually opposing Encephalon.
Really?
They were one of the reasons why they alien abducted you were doing like experiments and mind scans, as they were trying to figure out how deep Encephalon's control over you were. When you had like a psychic discussion with the Aboleth King, he asked you, "Are you servants of the Athema?" Is what their name for Encephalon was.
You see, I think the name part was lost on me for that. I thought they were talking later on about the those creatures that saved us.
Oh yeah, and then the Doyen and the giant cloud of psychic jellyfish. I had fun with that.
Names confuse me sometimes.
No, you're hearing me. And I had a big list of them written down, and I would still forget them all the time. How many times did I ask you about Tea Leaf, your fucking girlfriend's name?
Yep. I get it. Names are hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the entire underwater arc with that map that broke World 20 a little bit, and I learned my lesson.
They cannot be two big maps.
Yep.
It will allow.
Let's see. Was there anything else about the Sunless Sea? I'm trying to remember.
The dragon.
Oh yeah, Maldraxxus. That's
What
another
were
one.
the treasures we didn't get?
Oh my God. Let me dig through the notebooks here.
I guess actually
really,
up to this point, are there any big treasures we missed along the way? Or in general?
let's see. You got basically everything in the Earth's Wound. Just a few basic like +1 magic items from a Dragon Horde. Or no, for not Dragon Horde in the Giants stuff.
Right.
In book 1. I think you got most of it. Let's see. Oh, that's right. The Drugar archive. Okay, I'll bring that up in a second. Where did I put the notes for? It's... Oh, here we go. Maldraxxus's lair.
This is funny. I'm going back through my Skype, and there were so many texts between Gombo and I of like, "Is Richard on to us? Does Richard know what just happened?" And one I said,
yeah.
Richard specifically just said if anyone were charmed, they wouldn't be anymore when we cast Hallowed Ground. I mean, I was worried that he was somehow on to us.
There was at one point that I did have a suspicion when you were so easily to get off the pirate captain's shit list, and how you apparently just keep going in and out of that. But I kind of just let it go. I'm like, it's probably nothing.
It's always a constant thing with me with Richard and Kenneth. You guys are constantly looking for tropes that I'm invoking, so I need to keep trying to. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Potion of Cloud Giant Strength, Troll Blood Elixir, Clockwork Rogue's Ring, Agile Half Plate, Blade of Petals. That's the green short sword that Fergus really wanted. Wand of Polymorph, Bloodthirsty Pike, which was a cursed item, Commander's Full Plate, Arrow of Dragon Slaying, Tick Stopwatch, which you guys got, Ring of Telekinesis, a Rod of Security, Scrying Mirror, Song Saddle of the Khan, I forgot what that one did, Dirk of Daring, Magical Dagger, a Spellguard Shield, a Rift Orb, I forgot what that one did, a Scroll Rack was like a bunch of scrolls in it, Chalk of Exodus, which is like a magical circle making chalk, Wings of Flying, the Forge Firehammer, which was acquired by Taskell, the Draught of Ambrosia.
Unlike the Chalk of Leviticus, which just summons that fucking cat again.
The Chromatic Scabbard. That was a homebrew one that I really liked. It was a scabbard that you could bonus action resheath the sword, and then when you pulled it out again, the attacks until the end of the turn would be of a certain elemental of your choosing. Would have been very handy for dealing with Black Iron Colossus. An Unstable Bombard, just like an exploding bomb. The Quiver of Magic Arrows, and this had a bunch of different arrows. I was kind of bummed that Fergus didn't get. Signaling arrows, siege arrows, arrow of the Angry Hornet, a bullseye.
The dragon was sleeping on top of an unstable bomb. Is that just what I heard?
He's in a volcano. And then you guys got runic. Yeah, and that's pretty much all the items, plus a runic forge hammer and a planar ally scroll. So rules as written, each one of those piles was supposed to be an ancient dragon horde. I just rolled it 6 times. Just so that you guys had a bunch of items to pick through. If you had killed him, not impossible, would have been pretty challenging, but not impossible. You guys consistently punch above your weight. Just so much magic items. just so many things, but I think that made the treasure hoard of Maldraxxus at least memorable. Was just you guys were in there, and it was these huge piles of gold, and I'm just describing like all these items are magical.
I think if a regular situation, we probably could have beaten him. But with him just being able to dip in and out of the walls, we were finished trying to fight him in there.
Yeah.
Because he had a burrow speed, I think.
Only through lava. I had some thematic him burrowing, but in the actual boss fight.
I definitely enjoyed being able to use my scabbard to freeze the lava for a quick second, prevent him from coming when
I
was about to.
I was very happy with how the entire layer of Maldraxx's dungeon worked out. I think that one floor before the Dragon's Lair was really good. The lag to Kenneth's system aside, I think the lava level rising and falling mechanic made navigations and fights pretty fun. And then the actual dealing with the dragon himself, which is some of the most, at least for me, that was like some of the most authentic like D&D type of stuff where you're a small party of dwarves sneaking into the dragon's lair.
Yep.
Frigg's had a ring of invisibility and everything.
Yeah, right.
Which I'm surprised no one ever took a kingdom action to repair that thing. Because it had charges, and if you had repaired it to the true legendary Ring of Invisibility from the DMG, it was just at-will invisibility, no daily limits.
Yeah. I know, I just didn't really think I got out of the kingdom action.
Yeah.
I got really confused when it came to the kingdom action stuff for a while there.
Yeah, that's all good.
Just look how long it took us to remove the slag from the molten pool, right?
So yeah, the only other thing I think you guys missed in the Sunless Sea, and that's because it was a random encounter that just didn't get rolled, so I was still trying to use those, was that there was going to be a Derugar archive, an old like fortress building of one of their ruins they left when their empire was down there. If you went inside, it was going to be a very short mini dungeon that was just a place filled with a bunch of traps and one enemy called a formless spawn, this horrible alien goo monster. But if you had gotten to the center of it, gotten in, it was going to have this big archive area with these metal-lined books that was going to have a bunch of I had written library RP rules of doing knowledge checks using this archive on certain things. And you could have gotten some information about the legend of Deir Amaruk earlier. You obviously wouldn't have known Maldraxx's interest in it, but it would have like put that in the air. But it's fine. It wasn't critical path.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that place was going to have a teleportation circle that you could use to, if you wanted to use it as a hub. And I think that's basically everything from the Sunless Sea. A couple drow forts they didn't go to, which I was fine with you not going to because I didn't come up with anything. The Kraken got optional dungeon, which you could have done, but I'm glad you didn't because similarly I hadn't come up with a good design for that one. You guys are all DMs. You ever have it where you sit down and you write down an idea for something and you're like, oh, that's a fucking great idea. That would be cool if it was good. And then you try to expand upon that and you're like, ah, shit. What else do I do with that?
Right.
Yeah, I think we definitely all have that.
But then you guys got to Dammerhall. Oh yeah, and the giant golem door was the last thing from Fire Mountain Games. That was their own little bit of art and statement about getting to Dammerhall. Was the golem door who was the door.
Okay then.
I was very pleased with how the exploration of Dammerhall's interior went down. I was very much had it where it was going to be really obvious where Bendrak was for the final boss. And the more you guys explored around, you could get more power-ups and stuff to make the final boss fight easier. If you by like doing side quests, and you guys did some of them. You got the armory for Freya, and you got the. Well, you didn't get it before the fight. You ultimately got after the Axe of Dwarvish Lords for Fergus. Because if you had gone up to the palace, you could have gotten that for fighting Bendrak. If you had done a little digging around, you could have gone to the Molten Core of the Mountain earlier and fought that giant furnace monster that you guys did later. And Thrum could have gotten his powered up form earlier for fighting Bendrak. And then directly beneath Bendrak's main factory, there was the old ruins of the Ancestor Temple, where I was going to have you guys briefly step into the ethereal plane where all the dwarven souls are getting harvested. And Milgram would get a power up there after defeating some sort of freaky mecha monster. And that would have just been until you defeated Bendrak, you would cast spells as a level 20 warlock. It's like all the ancestors were channeling their power into you.
Slick.
And then there was going to be something in the temples for Haskell, which I hadn't quite figured that one out yet because you guys were already heading straight for Bendrak, which was totally fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, especially since you hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah. Listen, I try to obscure the fact that sometimes I'm just building the road directly in front of you guys. I would like to be able to sit back and put my feet up and say I have everything ridiculously planned out in a stack of 4 notebooks of every
it all
possible
went exactly to Keikaku.
Yeah. I get that reference. All according to Cake. But yeah, then you guys had your big knockdown drag out fight with Bendrak. I very much enjoyed that villain. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed his whole plan. I enjoyed shooting artillery at you guys. It doesn't matter the game or the genre. I've got a passion for big old World War I cannons that just lob death.
That's also probably the closest we got to a party wipe if we hadn't had the option of.
Yes, he had like 15 hit points left. So someone could have gotten a lucky shot and you might have been pulling it out. But that was, for me, like the peak encounter design I was ever able to achieve in the entire campaign was that battle against Bendrak. Because that was like a perfectly, and that's why I was saying some part of me thinks that's where the campaign should have ended. Because that was the perfect, like, you know, people were down. Fergus was missing an arm. You know,
I was
like,
dead technically.
Yeah. No, you didn't. You didn't full die.
Yeah, they'd use a revivify on me.
Oh right, yeah, that's right.
He died, and so did Thrum.
Ignis, yeah, and Ignis too. But it was great because it's like that fight took everything you guys had, and you still like it was that close to not succeeding. And I love the fact that when you got the walnut from Caliber later, Nutcrack Bendrak comeback. My best shower thought ever.
Right.
How I just always felt like that villain had such a shadow over the rest of the story, where you guys did go up like 4 more levels after that, and you guys were still like, if Bendrak ever returns, we are fucked.
Right.
Like, we can't do that again.
Yeah,
mechanically, you probably could. Yeah, in character, it was great.
But yeah, higher level, we probably could have wiped the 4th after that.
Yeah, but as a DM, that's what you want. You want to have the villain that felt so dangerous and menacing that your players felt like in character, my character wouldn't be quippy. I would be terrified of the idea of having to deal with that again.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt that he started to live rent-free in Freya's head because of Cursed Hat.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit of Dune to Marconin living in the brain.
Awfully quiet.
That's what it reminded me of.
Oh, yeah, you're
sorry, I have my microphone up.
I heard,
instead of down next to my mouth. Yeah, it reminded me of Dune 2.
Mm-hmm. which is very convenient because I'd never seen Dune 2. So, haha.
Not the movie, the book, where the little girl has Baron Harkonnen, the ghosts in her head.
Michael,
It's a pretty common trope, but that's the one I think of.
Yeah, I famously haven't read Dune. But yeah.
Famously.
I also enjoyed a lot of the symbolism of Bendrak and how it related to some of the characters in the party. I love because Fergus had his whole fuck dwarven tradition stuff, which I enjoyed. That it had to bring in Bendrak, who's like, yes, fuck dwarven tradition, replace it with war crimes. Now Fergus go, okay, maybe there is an extreme version of this. And also Freya's
okay, some traditions are good. Some traditions are there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And Freya's wanting to use golems and artifice to improve the defenses of Dammerhall. And Michael himself, you called it out, and I enjoyed that when you were talking with Taskell, where it's all like, we're trying to stop him, and we will, but I hate to say it, he did my goal. Like, there's no way anyone would ever conquer Dammerhall like this. It's pretty grim.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, adding to the long list of maybe that should have been the campaign villain and just ended it there because very on.
There's always those thoughts you have.
Yeah,
everyone's had those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there was a brief time after you beat Bendrak, I considered having Maldrax just make his inevitable return, and have that be the ultimate endpoint, is just beating Maldraxxus, and that's the sign that you've fully accepted your destiny as Dwarven Kings and everything like that. And just pretending like the entire Encephalon thing I was setting up never happened. But I stuck to my guns. I kept to my original plan. Made the campaign significantly longer, but it made Caliburb and a couple other characters less random or weird.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I wouldn't say it made it that much longer. It was maybe 6 months longer.
Just half a year,
Yeah. Well, on 4 years, that's just a drop in the bucket.
It's only really 3 months too, because.
Oh yeah.
And for Dammerhall with the curse, that means it was only really a month.
That's true. That's true. It was probably 3 sessions.
My favorite plot point that was right there that never got a hook whatsoever happened after you defeated Bendrak. And it was Fergus wandering through the palace, and he found Bendrak's old room, and it had that oil painting of the original adventuring party with Caliburb and everyone like that. And I described him finding a mithril compass that looks like it was made by Drow Design, that looked like it was a place of something precious. And Fergus looks at it, stares at it, and then Richard says, "Yeah, I just don't do anything else with it. I just put it back down." Because it was a magic compass.
What was that? Because
if you opened it up, there was going to be there was going to be a little oil painting in there of Firana. And the compass didn't point north. It magically pointed to a different compass that Firana had, that was a dwarven one, that had a picture of Bendrak in it, because they were secretly in love. And that's why Bendrak never had a queen.
Secret.
Yeah, that was going to be
at the death.
That was going to be a whole thing, because Caliburb and Oleander would harass them terribly about how they thought it was secret, but everyone knew. But it wasn't.
The gnome guy died though, right? He just died of old age running away.
Presumably, no one knows exactly what happened to him, but he was Ivy's dad, so he's lived longer than a normal gnome. But
gotcha.
But when we killed that lady, Caliburb brought out the compass. That was what you're referring to. Okay.
Yes, and funny enough, that compass could have been another. That compass could have been another way for you guys to have found Dwell Calder, or not Dwell, Dear Amaruk. because she spent most of her time there. So if you had followed, that compass doesn't point north because it's like a 3-dimensional one, log post style. So if you had followed that, that would have also taken you to the city. I threw a few threads out there.
It's always dear Amaruk. If we
Or
can
why
find out
Amaruk?
who's writing the letter, then we can find out who's really behind all of this. Who knows Amaruk?
So was the end game and Cephalon thing all hinging upon us going into Caliburb's castle? Or
Okay, so this is a great time to talk about Encephalon's plot. Encephalon needed.
Well, first, quick question before we get into that. With my Grudge Blade targets and the reward, did you already have like the rewards planned out tier-wise, or was it just going to be what you felt worked at for the time or was fitting for the time?
I didn't have it pre-planned out so much. If I felt you ever closing in on something, I was going to give you another one. But they were going to be like a few free Eldritch invocations, occasionally a cantrip or something like that, like you started with.
Yeah.
I mean, if all else fails, just expanding the limited warlock spell list was
for sure. Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that, but yeah, no, Encephalon's.
Yes. So for Encephalon's plan to work, he needed 3 things. He needed Bendrak to be defeated because he knew that if Bendrak marched his Black Iron army down onto him, he would be fucked because he couldn't do any of this soul harvesty shit on them. He couldn't do any of his mind powers on them. And they were basically unstoppable. So he needed someone to stop Bendrak. So that's why he was throwing mental shit at dwarves that it was one of those things where it was until he figured out a better plan, he was just playing a numbers game.
Just waiting for somebody to just go try to take the homeland so he doesn't have to deal with it.
Right. It's one of those, low cost, high reward type things. He was definitely trying to figure out other plans to stop Bendrak. But it was just like, well, I can just tertiarily do this in the background. I don't lose anything.
Right.
For the
just
effort.
send out a few, fake messages, few random texts.
You were just the guys that got lucky. The other thing he needed the arcane combination from Caliburb. And he needed the power of a god. That last one, there's multiple paths to get there. His original plan was to try to provoke you guys into going to war with the Drow, because the Drow Queen was not on his side and could resist him. So if you pushed her hard enough, she would summon her Demon Lord. And this is a whole thing where if you had broken in the Drow City after a protracted war, you guys would have run in there to have a showdown with the Queen of the Drow as she finishes her demon summoning ritual. And that's when Encephalon was going to pounce on him and try to consume that Demon Lord's mind, because I was going with the whole knowledge is power thing. And then you would have been boss fighting the Queen and all of her people and be like, is the tentacle dragon on our side? I mean, it's not attacking us, so it's tanking the Demon Lord, so maybe that's good. Which, to be fair, I don't think that would have been a bad scene if it had worked out like that.
I'm never one to look a gift tentacle demon in the mouth. It's kind of gross.
Or this is more of a narrative thing. If the Drow pushed you back to the brink, then maybe one of the dwarven gods would have stepped in and he could have done the same thing. That was unlikely to happen out of character, but that's the stated goal.
But instead, they didn't do anything the whole game except give us a novelty mug.
Hey, he
basically
brought Olgrim back, reforged Olgrim, and made a bridge.
No offense, Combo, you made the most useless fucking god in any fantasy setting.
That was intentional. That was what I was going for.
It is interesting. Harvest the Black Iron Army, because that was kind of my worry with the God Blood. Was like, are we just kind of bringing him the all-you-can-eat buffet?
And you did with the army. And that was a goal that I had written down in my notebook way, way back before you guys even reclaimed Dammerhall. I was very much like, these are the only ways Encephalon could win, and I'm gonna stick to this. If you guys had gone down to that city just on your own with no army, it would have been a very different story because I would have probably had to just make you guys fight all those bosses at the exact same time. Firana, Tomas, the Alchemist, and normal Encephalon all at the same time, just to make it mean something. Probably the results would have been the same, albeit less climactic. But if it was less climactic, it would just been like, you foiled his plan. You did the exact thing that would anti his abilities. There was an entire separate plot line that didn't get done in Kingdom Building involving the Drow City. And this was not like a missed thing. It was just like the road splits in two, and you chose left and not right. Where it was going to be all about the internal politics of the various houses of the Drow City. It was going to bring into the fact that the house that Firana was in charge of was weird, and everyone was off-put by that. There was going to be a tiefling matron mother that was going to, if you guys had started trying to do infiltrations into the Drow, because like you guys didn't even send spies in there to try to figure out what was going on. There's going to be a tiefling mother that wanted to play Kingmaker for herself to become the new queen of the Drow, and she was going to be like, "Hey, I'm going to team up with you guys." I had this whole speech for Fergus for her that would have been very fun, which is that peace between our people is just not going to happen. So why don't we have just a very profitable Cold War? Like, some of us attacks a few of your people's outposts, and then you get your dwarven vengeance, and now we both have a common enemy we can always politically scapegoat. And so what if a few lives are consumed every year or so? Just like, it's a good idea, but just make you feel slimy about agreeing to it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd agree to it over a wine, a bottle of wine, which would probably be well, at least she brought wine.
Yeah.
Or even worse, if she brought like a dwarven ale. Trying to give an olive branch and just like.
Yep. And that was going to be another place where you could have ran into Hestia again. She was supposed to be originally, I was going to have her being like a slave in the gladiatorial arenas they had there. Which when I knew that was
while
happening,
you were saying that, do you have a rough idea of her story once we parted ways from her in the fungal jungle, or in the
Sunless Sea? Yeah. So basically, she was convinced that she got exiled along with her cousin, the Baroness. So she was convinced, a bit absurdly, that if she could just get back into the city, that she was clever enough and ruthless enough that she could start building up for herself again. Once she was
trying
back.
To remember, where did we see her at the Sunless Sea? I remember we saw her.
You met her at Alexi's vampire therapist house.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
He set up a ship for her to get back in. She did. She was immediately arrested because she was exiled, and she was handed over to the house that Firana run, who makes all the driders because they do flesh crafting science. And that's why she got turned into a drider.
She should just hung out with us in the first place, after all.
Yeah, and that was kind of the story. It was you guys were trying. I wanted to have a character who was like your Team Rocket, and you guys were dead set on befriending her, which was perfect because that made then what eventually happened to her all them more tragic. Like, she had outs that she just wasn't going with. Now, obviously, I didn't want that character just to disappear, so that's why I put her working in the quarries down in the underground.
Like I said, well, you mentioned that you were wanting to create those recurring NPCs, and just more proof that you did a great job with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let's see what else. What else really was there? Any questions so far while I'm racking my brain?
What I can think of. What would have happened if we'd actually gone inside and explored that dead Kraken?
There would have been a dungeon that would have eventually ended up with you in the Kraken's brain chamber, where a bunch of star spawn and Ilphalids were harvesting its brain for Encephalon to consume to increase his knowledge and power and how to awaken the avatars. It would have been kind of a foreshadowy thing. I probably would have put some like magic items in its guts or something like that, but it was a way to introduce mind flayers earlier. The mind flayers themselves didn't really get a chance to be the characters, but the story was that they found a wounded and dying Encephalon when he was just a blue dragon after Durin defeated him, and they tadpoled him to turn him into the most powerful minion for the brood mind or whatever you call it. However, as according to D&D lore, most adult dragons have way too powerful of a mind for that. And he sort of overpowered with his own psyche and took over the entire mental network instead. That's why he turned the Elder Brain into a minion that he then had strapped to another dragon. Oh yeah,
if you underestimate the ass brain.
Mm-hmm.
Did it make you a little bit mad when Baldur's Gate 3 came out?
Not entirely, no. Mind flayers are a little bit old hat. Like, also, D&D has had a long history of publishing books and content of ideas that I had mentioned to a friend like 6 months prior. They're very famously.
They've got you bugged.
Yeah, very famously they
so
announced.
So you think they're tapping into our calls.
Yes, they definitely are. Because very famously, when they announced the book Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which starts with like a Fey circus, and then you go into a Feywild adventure. And I mentioned my other group during the Fey campaign that week after they announced it. I'm like, I would like to have it known that what happens next session was planned 2 months ago. They're like, what do you mean? And then a Fey circus rolls into town. I am very unhappy. Because now it looks like I'm stealing someone else's thing, but I'm not. This was my idea, damn it.
Your FBI agent's really good, and he's got connections with Hasbro's. See now, right?
Corrupt fuck. But yeah, the Mind Flayers were a strategic choice just because they were a common D&D monster that I also like the art of the Brain Stealer Dragon, which was what Encephalon was. And you got
when
to
I
fight
saw
him.
that come out, I'm like, oh, Gombo's going to use this, isn't he?
Wait, was a Brain Stealer Dragon in that game too?
No, but they came out with a book with a bunch of different dragons.
Oh, the Elder Brain Dragon. Yeah, I ended up using that one as well. Yeah, if you had done the infiltrate oh yeah, because that was one of the things from the Fire Mountain Kickstarter is that they said that you get captured and go to the Drow City, which is wild to boldly claim level 17 Pathfinder characters can be captured. Like it's just a snap of your fingers thing. I was going to go with important NPC maybe gets kidnapped and then you go undercover. But ultimately I didn't want to force that. I wanted to leave it open to your guys' own choices of how you did it. And also, when you reach the level of power, when you're commanding an entire kingdom, you need to start coming up with reasons why the fuck PCs are going to the field and not sending minions just to do this, because
yeah,
you know that was a little bit of a thing for a little bit of Way of the Wicked for me, especially at higher levels. It was like, why are we, the masters, getting out of bed to do this? Shouldn't we have like mid-level hench people handling this while we sit back and sip wine and laugh?
Fair.
I mean, we didn't have hench people. We just
near the end we did.
I think all of us took leadership as soon as possible.
Yes, yeah. we were so ready to kill Cardinal Thorn way earlier than the book was expecting us to. Like,
I think everybody's playing you wanting to. I think it's
we met Cardinal Thorn and we were like, if he turns around for long enough, you think you can kill him?
The small benefit to the Hell's Vengeance Pathfinder AP, where you play as evil characters, is you don't work for one particular person, you work for the entire Chelish government, which is a little bit harder to fit a dagger into. Sure, you can stab your handler in the back, but you can't kill the entire military industrial complex.
Sounds like a challenge.
But yeah.
Yeah, we'll replace him. What you did was killed Tom.
There was a possibility you could have rescued the adult blue dragon that was the Hellspit's half-sister, who was ultimately became the Elder Brain dragon that you guys fought. So RIP for her. I also just loved the idea, because I've never seen that in fiction, because you always hear about like half dragons, right? I'm like, what if a half dragon person and a full-blooded dragon who are half siblings just actually got along? Like, what if they have like a really good sibling dynamic?
Well, I mean, that bastard had to have gotten along with somebody. I mean, damn.
He definitely wasn't a people person.
Oh yeah, and Hellspit's dad was Encephalon.
Oh, we established that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I just wanted to make sure that was for the record in the call. Let's see.
So is the red dragon actually dead, by the way?
I'm leaving that.
Leaving it on the fence. Okay.
Leaving it on the fence. It's a lot like the walnut with Bendrak, where I'm kind of done with the world, but if someone else wants to step in and tell a story, pieces are on the board. You got the orange goop with the finger armor of a god. You got the nebulous fate of Maldraxxus. Maybe Bendrak comes back. Drow are still down there.
Yeah, to rewind there again. I suppose afterwards we can expand it into other shit other stuff various people contributed. I know I kind of one drafted that creation myth thing that ended up being the Black Iron.
That was a beautiful moment of everything working out serendipitously, because once again, from way back, I knew for a fact that Bendrak was making some sort of evil metal out of dwarven souls and bodies, and that was part of his whole Black Iron Army thing. I hadn't called it that yet, but I'm like, that's what's happening. And then you said, hey, I've got this lore thing, and it was about a evil dwarven god possibly using a soul to make an evil blackened metal. I'm like, there it is. Fucking sold. I can just it was already what I was going to do anyway, so I'll just take Kenneth's name and slap it on it, and oh wow, look at that, you've really contributed to the whole stuff.
Yeah, but my question was more, would it have cropped up with the Jello at that point at all? Would he have still had some of the evil metal if I hadn't done that at that point with the random inspiration?
Oh no, probably not. I keep things flexible. Little things about the plot change as you go. You know, the overall parabellum of the story is the same, but some of the little details and bumps along the road change.
What was? Are you able to give us a behind the screen look on what was done and why to the temple being destroyed by Father Mountain?
Yes. Okay. So that wall carving thing from the Giants is about the deep prehistory of the setting. Was that long, long before mortals as you know it walked the world. The world was attempted to be invaded and ruled by minions of the true gods, which are the outer gods. Very much the Lovecraftian space mythos thing. At that time, the world was inhabited by two elder races, which were the dragons and the giants. The giants were significantly larger and more powerful than they were now. Modern day giants are relatively puny. Old giants were the kind that would lift their
Talking
knees.
like Titans.
Yeah, they would lift their knees to step over mountain ranges. As part
Americans, they get smaller with every subsequent generation.
Yeah. As part of this ongoing war against the beings trying to invade, that's where the Aboleths originally came, and they took over the seas, and they brought with them a servitor race known as the Kuatoa. While the dragons and the giants were originally losing the war, they got help from an extraplanar race from the realm of dreams, who would in time become known as house cats. Yeah, so it was a war of dragons, giants, and cats versus Cthulhu. So to tip the war in their favor, they ended up stealing the Kuatoa from the Aboleths, because the Kuatoa had the ability that if enough of them believed in a god, it made a real god based after whatever they thought it was. So the Kuatoa were dumb and primitive and could be tricked into dreaming up what is essentially super soldiers to help them win the war. The avatars of Amaruk were some of the leftover weapons, or as Leviticus called it, a gardening tool belonging to those outer gods. And the god's blood was where a series of giants had managed to slay a elder god. And that was just the wreckage of its body. The fungal jungle was a small chunk of it that broke off as it was driven into the earth. When Richard briefly connected to the spore network, I described titanic mountain-sized figures in armor driving a formless horror into the earth. So that, that quarry where everyone was digging for the god's blood, that was just the tip of one of the giant spears all the way this deep underground. Anyway, so they got the Kuatoa to start making gods, and they eventually won the war. The cats do what cats did and mostly just fucked off. Because cats. And the world was divvied up between dragons and giants. They would eventually divvy up the Kuatoa themselves as their servants and worshippers as they entered this horror sort of, I wouldn't say golden period, but like primeval ruling of the world. Eventually, the Kuatoa over thousands of years began evolving, and they started closely resembling humans, elves, gnomes, and dwarves as we know them. They actually all have a common ancestor, so that entire story about Father Mountain and Mother Fire crafting the first dwarves is full bullshit. So at one point, the now young races who got tired of being under the thumb of giants and dragons imagined great and powerful gods that would help free them, which they did. But then those gods became insecure in their station and power, because if their worshippers just created new divine beings, they would fade and not become as much. So they convinced the modern mortal population that they couldn't create gods, that they were the only gods. And over generations, sort of retconned history, history written by the victors, into, no, we made you, you don't make us. Never mind that if enough people stop worshiping a god, they start sort of fading from existence. So that's why Father Mountain and Mother Fire were very non-committal, because they were not actually omnipotent. They just have a lot of magic and a lot of servants that snitch to them, like clerics, like Taskell. They just trick people into thinking they're omnipotent. They're actually a bit weaker than most people give them credit for.
Yeah, so and they might not know what their followers don't know. Is closer to the money than I had thought at the time.
Yes, that is why the Burning Darkness said, "Don't tell Taskell." Since Taskell was getting divine powers from Father Mountain, he was an unintentional spy. Right. If you had gone to that pillar without him, you would have gotten a lot of this information in cave drawings. and you would have learned that you were being deceived by your own gods, and that their deception is actually making you as a species weaker. So that's pretty much what that information is. Also, to make
Yikes.
Thrum deeply annoyed by the fact that elves and dwarves come from the same place.
Yep. Yikes.
Would have shared his worldview too, I'm sure.
Yep. So
listen, you don't understand, Gambo. It's not that the story of Father Mountain and Mother Fire is fake. It's that it's hyper real. You understand?
Mhm.
I think Kenneth might be the only one who knows what I'm referencing there. If you ever listen to Jordan Peterson talk about the Bible, he'll never say that it's true or that things happen. He calls it hyper real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his angle's more, it's the truth of like the Aesop's fable style of, yeah, it's fiction, but here's the meaning. But yeah, no, he's also a wormy guy who'll never answer when questioned on what he actually means.
It's like a banker and a attorney.
But to Michael's point he made earlier, yes, they are very useless chicken shit gods. That was not offensive. That was as written. I was going for
They gave us a novelty mug. They said dwarves #1.
Yes. It was what if that whole we send you forth to conquer this challenge on your own to make you better was just literal bullshit. It was just go and do this because we might die and we're scared of that. We don't know what our afterlife is.
Wasn't there a point where Taskell was able to choose between his current
yes, the
religious
burning
alignments
darkness.
of the burning darkness? Did you have any plans, Iffy?
I did. I had a third party domain. I would have let him keep Forge if he had wanted to, but there's a third party domain called the Destruction domain, and it had a really awesome channel divinity. It's that choose one target, and for the next damage they take, they're vulnerable to that, even if they were previously immune. So, for example, imagine Maldrax is sitting in a pool of lava. He goes Destruction, and then he takes double lava damage when he's supposed to be immune to fire.
Yeah, that would not be fun from LED.
Mm-hmm. And that was going to be the entire thing, where the Burning Darkness, he was evil. He was lawful evil, but he was one of those evils that just had points. Is that his whole reason was that he hated Father Mountain and Mother Fire. They were his actual parents. They actually did make him. But then he found out the truth of their creation, and he got mad on behalf of the dwarves. So his solution was just patricide. So they sealed him in a pocket dimension. He was definitely a bad person that didn't think he was a bad person, and that would have been Taskell's who you are in the dark moment if he started getting into bed with him. Because Bendrak did make a deal with the Burning Darkness to learn how to make all those golems and everything like that.
And probably break into the dwarven afterlife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that same pocket dimension where the Burning Darkness is where all the Grudgebound go when they die. It would have been a truly horrific scene if Nulgrim had died and gone there, because it was just like an entire dense space that was just limbs of the Grudgebound stacked on top of each other, and then the center of it was the Burning Darkness, who had like an anvil of a bunch of them. Very much a super hell kind of situation.
Fun.
Mm-hmm.
Not super hell.
Something Nulgrim gets to look forward to.
Well, it's cool. He's chasing down Caliburbs right now.
Mm-hmm.
They did entirely restructure how the Grudge Blade thing works. So people have a better understanding of what they're signing up for, but also probably deviating from that entire path.
Was there anything else? Trying to think. I think it's most of the stuff.
I think that's mostly it that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, was there anything to actually find in the water section of the final area?
Oh yeah, that it was gonna have a bunch of ambushes where some aquatic creatures popped out of the wading pools to ambush your army from both sides.
Okay,
It was just gonna be another obstacle.
gotcha.
Was there any those 4 quadrants of land had some sort of feature to them? Was there anything weird about the stony one?
I mean, we have the land.
The southernmost one.
That's what Richard just asked. The water one.
Well, yeah, I know the water, but like the forest had those like mine intellect devourers in them. The northern one had the quarry. The eastern one had the
Alchemist Fortress, and this other one was a bunch of tide pools that would have.
Okay. It's not just the body of water; it was the tide pools. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
How many characters? Like, this is more of a party question. How many characters died? Like, and just went down? Like, I know Nolgrim died. What, twice?
I died twice.
No.
Freya never died.
Nolgrim died once. He did death saving throws as a ghost, but he never full on died.
If we count uses of Revivify as a death.
Oh, who knows? God.
That's what I'm trying to recall. Does anybody remember theirs?
I know Thrum went down maybe twice in the Bendrak fight.
I died to Bendrak.
Does that sound right?
I died to Bendrak and I died to that demon underneath.
Yeah, not talking going down, but dying.
Yeah, not getting knocked unconscious, but actually dying and having to use Revivify so that you come back.
Or another special item.
I mean,
yeah, Freya was, I'm almost certain, was 0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a demon and underneath that cave.
Didn't Taskell die in our first session?
Other than Bendrak.
Yeah, he got knocked to 0, but made the saves. So.
I mean,
I always backed Freya with
technically
heals
died
just in case Taskell went down to bring him back up.
Yeah, I think Taskell and Freya never died.
Any idea of how many suits you lost?
The night that
it's 4 or 5, I want to say.
The night that Tomas backstabbed Fergus, I think Thrum died.
Oh yeah, he did die.
It took a long time, but yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, it took a long fucking time. He took like 300 damage at I don't know, level 8 or level 9.
Yeah.
But I think he died that night. And then I know he went down during the Bendrak fight. But other than that, I don't think, and he went down at the end. He died at the end.
Yeah.
I remember that fight where everyone had to fight Thrum, and that was after Cope just did all the retraining levels and got the new barbarian archetype for Thrum with the chain and everything like that. And I remember Cope messaging me about that. Underwater, and I remember Cope messaging me about that beforehand. And he's like, "Hey, so I know the barbarian ability lets me use Constitution for AC. But I was wondering if maybe I could use Strength instead." Just he's like thematically shrugging off blows, which I said, "No, you have 20 Strength. no. And you're like, all right, I'll go with your decision. And then that fight happens, and then Thrum almost killed like half the party. And then I remember Combs like, okay, never mind. That was a good call. Yeah, that issue should not be higher.
That was a very good call. Sticking with Khan was a good call there. Because he never had crazy stats, but
yeah.
What are everybody's favorite just jokes or bits from the story, like Nolgrim stealing the Skizril sheets and not realizing it?
Let's see.
I like y'all dog piled on me with Thrum a lot. With the fucking wives was a hilarious, consistent joke.
I love that we're able just, especially you, just leaned into that too. Just it's great having just that reoccurring like backstory reference that just lives.
Yep.
I loved early on.
Hestia.
I loved early on you guys explaining cheese to Ivy. I had a lot of that. Where it's like, yeah, it's made from milk. And it's like,
milk.
Any kind of milk? And Michael's like, nope, stop this. No.
Oh God, I do remember that. Oh, gross, with the humanoid milk. Yes.
Yeah. And I said, oh, you don't care about your internet search history? Google it. And you're like, already on it.
Already on it. Already did it. And yes, it was a thing. Oh, gross. God. Now that feels like.
Oh, that's weird. It's only normal to drink the milk of a large bovine creature.
Yes,
that's normal.
But cheese that comes from your mother, no, that's disgusting.
You're a fucking pervert if you do that.
I enjoyed role-playing anything with Caliber when he was crazy.
Yeah, I love the Caliber introductions, and just anything referencing Caliber was always one of my favorite cameos.
I liked how my attempts to speak Caliber just always seemed to work.
Maybe this is a me thing, but I feel like that is a character that a lot of DMs would want to have around, which is just the character who's so batshit insane that it's comedy, but he's also just an incredibly powerful spellcaster that's like, boom, plot!
Yeah.
Portals, sealing demons! I'm gonna take a nap.
Right?
I would say this.
We lucked out with that because we managed to get out of that first encounter with Caliber, stealing a ton of his stuff and with a free usable wish from him.
Yeah.
I would say.
You guys think? Okay, go.
5 years ago, in the beginning of our game, the spreadsheet crap. Oh my God, I would never do that again. We got way too in depth with, way too in depth with the rations.
That's good to know. I have that fatal illness where I like the idea of inventory and resource management in these games. I like thinking about how much you need to prepare with journeys, but it's one thing to live and learn.
I did like it, and I liked it at the time. I would say now, I'd just be like, oh God, no, I'm not fucking doing that.
Yeah. I feel like I like having that stuff, but it'd probably be easier just break it down to X number of, shelf stable rations and X number of exploration and all.
It's also a mechanical thing. Like, I have a different RPG I'm probably going to run for my other group called Ryutama. It's a Japanese RPG where the core mechanic is literally about traveling from A to B. There is combat, but combat has such a light weight to it. There's literally no movement. It's just roll dice, deal damage. But all the inventory management and the daily travel stuff has a much more in-depth rules. And the reason why it's like that is because 5th edition combat's the core mechanic. In this other game, travel is the core mechanic. So, think about how much time and effort you put into a D&D combat encounter. Imagine if you put that effort into traveling, but you just didn't do that for combat.
I guess that'd be fun. I'm also
Yeah.
big on those like sim management, city management games and all that stuff. So
yeah, you and I might have the same sickness then.
Yeah.
I love the old school style of D&D where you have an iron piton and a rock, and you're trying to figure out how you can use this to disable a trap.
Mhm.
But that's just a me thing, and I guess that's a good segue from Cope. But like, I'm a game designer in my heart, and a big part of that is feedback of what did I do right, what did I do wrong. Any criticism or feedback or something to improve upon or think about in the future, or even if it's not you did this bad, it could be is there more of this in the future?
4 years.
Okay, yeah, I'll make it shorter.
It's a long time.
Yep, it is. I don't disagree.
I think after 2 effectively consecutive, 1 to 20 campaigns, I think we are realizing no, there's actual value in just stopping midway.
Yeah.
Or making it episodic enough that you could set it down and walk away, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a lot of, we were talking about old school style D&D with those hex crawls. A big benefit of that style of play is that when you clear out one dungeon, if you need to take 2 years off, you just do.
Yeah.
Save the sheet somewhere.
Honestly, I was kind of burnt out on the hex crawl by the end of the. Actually, by the midpoint of the Sunless Sea, I was like, I'm kind of.
Yeah, I think the Sunless Sea were starting to wear off. I have other hex crawl based systems I think would have made it better now, rather than the hex by hex exploration. Instead, I would have just given you like a map of the region, but just with none of the landmarks on it. And then it's a point A to point B. So you're like, I'm going to travel from this town to this town, and then you just mark your areas where you're going to travel. And then rather than a day by day thing, it's just you settle it over a couple skill rolls. I could give an entire detail on how that would work based on the rules I have found later, but definitely other ways I could have handled it. I mean, in a way, you getting burned out on the journey was a part of the design intention, in that I wanted your characters to be weary from a long quest, but also not ideal. Some real Sam and Frodo finally reaching Mordor.
Yeah, I'm glad. I will say there's a definite satisfaction in that we finished it.
I did like the kingdom building setup we had going. Was just enough to be mechanically satisfying to do the thing, but abstract enough that we didn't feel bound to.
Yeah, it's such good.
Right.
So much room for, customization.
No options to kill the merfolk.
Fergus never did murder the ocean.
I wanted to so bad.
That was the weirdest thing from Way of the Wicked.
Way of the Wicked had just weird options.
Systematically murder all the merfolk. And we're like, wait, there's merfolk? Yeah, they attacked you back in book 1. I'm sorry, were we supposed to be holding a grudge for that this entire time?
I could at this point, but it's just weird that you wrote it down as a specific option.
I mean, it really does depend, because, I'm sure it's about whichever foe really stands out on the party. Like in a playthrough I watched before I did Way of the Wicked, it was like the bunyips in one of the first islands you reach whenever you're on your way up. You guys, it was the Moondogs, So it really
was there one where it was like the sentient polar bears?
Yeah, that was briefly mentioned, like in book 1, just kind of in passing as like what some of the
Swear to
creatures
God,
were
we
up
would have
there.
remembered that.
And it's possible that I hadn't mentioned it. I could have swore I
still
did,
holds it
but
up.
no,
We
it's
never
fair.
heard it.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair.
It might have been a thing where you mentioned the name but didn't give a description. And said,
Yeah,
"Okay,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's most likely it.
Yeah.
They probably had a weird name and you didn't tell us what they are because
Yeah, it was
I
like
get
the
what
Nanotuck
Gombo's
or
saying,
something
where
like
it's
that,
like,
so, yeah.
I know
I
my
would have remembered this golden
said
compass
sentient
bullshit.
polar bears. My brain would have remembered
Yeah.
sentient
Yeah.
polar
So
bears.
it's entirely possible I just dropped the tribe name that it was given in the book and not,
Mhm.
expanded
Yeah.
on that. You probably just saw, okay, name, okay, whatever, right?
Yeah. There's a
Those
lot.
must be
There's
the
a lot of
weird
information.
snow elf people or something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, those are the Eskimos up there. Oh wait, no, the Eskimos are just sentient polar bears. Wait, what?
Inuit, Loki.
Yeah. What?
It's
Jeez.
just into it. More people in canoes paddling
Yep.
out to us that
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah, I'm just
need to
joshing
talk
around.
to. But
You'll have to forgive Michael. He's a little artistic.
The doctor even said he was mildly artistic.
I feel like that's the difference between the APs and your home brews, right?
Yeah.
The APs, there's so much information that you're reading for the first time as a DM that you're putting out there. The home brews, like it's in the back of your mind. You always know it and you will point it back out.
Well, and sometimes with the APs, they put things in there for you to expand upon on your own because some people like have parties that go on weird tangents in APs.
Oh yeah.
So, what were there any sort of weird side projects people like? Any sort of like side stories that might not have been too pronounced in the story, like any sort of things like Freya was developing, like underhanded mechanization, not underhanded, but just like
everything Gombo
For all the
did
jokes
for
we made, I don't really think I did.
Did Michael cut out for everybody else, or is this just me?
Yeah.
I was gonna say everything
must have
that,
finished during
that
the
Gombo did for Thrum was we had discussed because I had a Emmanuel from the Snake Rider campaign was going to be Thrum for this game. And then when we switched to 5e, he had to completely change. And I was just kind of like, yeah, whatever.
I mean,
And
didn't
Gombo
you say
threw
that?
out a couple of ideas.
Because wasn't Ranger one of your favorite classes? Wait, is he the Ranger? What was his original class?
He was a Ranger.
He was originally a Ranger.
Gotcha.
And then, and Gombo was just called me over to the side and said, "What do you want him to do?" And it was a Ranger class that grew in size and grappled. And all I wanted him to do was grab the enemy and hit the enemy with the enemy. Was his original
hit a
idea.
motherfucker with another motherfucker.
Yeah, pick up a motherfucker and bash him to death with another motherfucker. And it never really ended up going that way. But Gombo just like completely came up with these whole ideas. All of what Thrum was not anywhere written in paper. Gombo just came up with it, and it was fantastic for somebody who was going into it with the Ranger and was like, "This fucking sucks. I don't like 5e." Grumble, grumble, grumble.
It was also
made it.
A really sneaky way for me to give Cope Dragon Ball Z power-ups without him knowing it. Make him into an anime character.
You see,
under his nose.
It's double under his nose because he doesn't know what the fuck that is.
I don't even know what you just said.
It's the vegetable in the freezer show, Cope, that we were talking about.
Okay,
from
so
months ago.
there's a common trope in a lot of anime Cope, where a character needs to get stronger in a fight, So they take a moment to power up some form, and then they take on a new form, including a change of physical traits. And then they are stronger in fighting. Your
like
final
Popeye,
form,
like Popeye the Sailor Man, he whipped
Yes.
out a can of spinach and ate that.
So
That's a
your
transformation.
but
your
much more
pyroclastic avatar form
melodramatic.
literally made you have to take a round of screaming and powering up to achieve your final power.
Mhm.
It is.
Mhm.
I had a good time chuckling in the background while giving you cool character moments.
So on that, because I was definitely noticing a clear theme with this elemental stuff. Had we gone after the cloud giants, was there an air spirit up there that he could have bonded with as well, potentially?
No, but if he asked about it, I would have written something.
Man, I really wanted to just deal with Cloud Giants just so we could have tried to get him air powers.
Yeah, if we could just make him Avatar the Last Airbender too, throw that in there.
And then at the very end of the campaign, when he died, it could have been him getting the heart powers. He would have been Captain Planet at the end.
This is my immolated form. And this is to go one step beyond.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, Michael. I was just sitting back over here writing this. I'm like, Hope isn't gonna get this reference.
That is the best power up seen in any anime. I don't care what anyone says. Sean Trammell screamed for 3 minutes straight. You can't cut that in. That's one take. You can't do multiple. Like, he can't like take a breath in the middle. He's got to scream that whole 3 minutes. He passed out in the middle of it. They had to throw away a take.
The alternate universe where Hestia joins the party, Thrum gets air powers, and at the end, him and Hestia kiss before his sacrifice, and he then becomes Captain Planet after getting heart. The final wife.
Everyone was trying to manifest Thrum and Hestia being a thing.
Y'all really did. That was hilarious. Every time she came up, it was like, "Hey, Thrum, your girlfriend."
And I think the Thrum found the way to avoid it in the post game by just, no, I'm done.
I'm too old for this shit. I'm gone.
Yeah, I will not have her as my ex.
Post game, some of his wives show up for alimony. Too bad he's dead. They find out he was part of the king's inner circle. Only too late.
Those money grubbing bitches, they would have done it too.
Would have been hilarious if basically an entire dwarven house was founded around the ex-wives.
I had a question, Gumbo.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, the dwarven clans. Did you have like already the plan in mind of which one was going to be working with Tomas once you decided that, or did you kind of wing it for like who was going to be the clan that was supporting them?
I knew right away that it was going to be Clan Grimpire.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
Yep. That was one of those things I wanted to make sure I had set in stone earlier, so that way it wasn't too quantum ogre.
Gotcha.
And it's not like the entire clan was on his side. It was just that.
But that's the clan that he was like connected to.
Yeah.
Who could have guessed it would have been Clan Grimpire?
I mean, none of the names were that like goody two shoes really sounding.
Yeah.
None of them were that evil though.
I'd have to launch it up if I wanted to find out. I can't remember all the names of them.
Shale Brew, Embermane, Highcliff.
I mean, they're undead hunters. Grimpire doesn't sound that bad compared to them.
Yeah. I mean, it was appropriate for what. I mean, they're supposed to be kind of creepy, anyways.
Out of curiosity, just a fun question. What's everyone's favorite NPC?
Caliber. Are you talking about part within?
Oh no, just anyone that you didn't play.
Yeah, I would say Caliber, just because looking at his entire arc, how he started out, and we thought just a weird office rocker wizard, but turns out, oh wow, there's a deep story behind this. You know.
Probably
And-
Miku.
Yeah.
I like Miku a lot. Although towards the end, I was really warming up to the guy that was supposed to be our merchant advisor guy, just because the running joke with him. Like, okay, it's also talking. Please leave the room.
And I'll say she was our go-to NPC companion pretty much the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah. She was really the Grumblejack, I would say.
Some of the shenanigans with Ivory were fun.
Mm-hmm.
And she always had the best quips.
Yep.
I remember her getting upset with Nolgrim because they took a quick outing in the Underbald.
Mm-hmm.
I think my most memorable part in this whole campaign, though, at least for me, because just the sheer hilarity of it, when Nolgrim's like, "Hey, I have the ability to teleport behind this door. Let's see where it is." We go back there immediately, accosted by demon dogs.
Yep.
And that really summed up the two of theirs relationship.
Yeah.
Like, hey, want to do something stupid? No, but let's do it anyway.
I have this idea. 50-50 chance I end up swimming in lava, but we'll we want to give it a shot.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. Nilgrim being Fergus's half brother. That was Loki way before the start of the campaign.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's like, I want to be Fergus's secret half brother. Even my character doesn't know about it. I'm like, okay.
Because
you all just made Freya very mad.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was one of those like I wanted to. It could have been. Like, no, shut the fuck up. Because it was one of those of, well, when we got the kingdom, I was curious how that would have, and obviously it adds drama to it, but it also really depended on how our characters got along, through the path, right? Mm-hmm. And so that really dictated how that all played out.
Freya was doing Watergate scandals to you, making sure Fergus got in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thrum almost single-handedly.
If you had given one iota of effort, you would have been king.
I like how the campaign started with Thrum pissing in a quarry, and in the end, he became the quarry.
I very much enjoyed that political role thing where I think the system I used was pretty light and easy to move through the politicking. And I also enjoy the setup where it could have been Nulgrim or Fergus. We all know that Tomas wasn't going to win. But the campaign would have gone either way, which did introduce some actual uncertainty into the outcome. Like, Fergus
I actually kind of wanted Nulgrim to become king because it would have been funny.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite parts. If we were to get something animated,
I could tell you did, because you were like, I'm not voting against this, or like,
yeah,
no one was really raising their hand against it, so it was just kind of a fun in character thing.
One of my favorite scenes from that arc, and if this was to be animated, this would be the one, which is where Nulgrim was meeting with the head of the clan that he was related to that wanted to put him forward to the throne. And he's like, why should I be king? And then the guy's like, but don't you see? You're the first Grudgeblade there's been in 300 years. You're one of the heroes that reclaimed Dammerhall. You wield a Grudgeblade. Your body was reforged upon the anvil of Father Mountain's own forge. And you're like, oh, fuck, that does sound like a king of legend, doesn't it?
Here, actually, Gumbo, I have a question.
Nope.
If he did become king, if by the end of his life, could he have been entombed like the previous rulers and circumvented his own demise for like afterlife?
Oh no,
his own grudge. I wasn't sure. Because they technically have their own separate afterlife that they forged themselves, kind of thing. That they weren't part of the.
Yeah, it's because his soul gets consumed by the anger of
I was just curious.
Yeah,
if that would have been a way to circumvent that.
So as an extra thing, if Nulgrim had won, Tomas would have tried to stab him in the back underneath the guise of, well, I guess we're brothers, we should learn how to get along, and stab. and throw him off the balcony.
Oh, funny.
Fucking Freya was about to stab Nolgrim if he fucked up, created a whole big political situation. You'll be fucking picking peanuts with Jimmy Carter.
Yikes. That's my
Very
fucking
topical,
dude
Michael.
down here.
Yeah.
That's my state.
I love
What
Jimmy
if
Carter, Cope. We were talking about it while you weren't on the call last time, but he's a great guy. Love him.
How would Freya have especially if it was just Middlefinger having carried it the entire way and bringing Nolgrim to the throne, how would Freya have changed her behavior, just demeanor, just anything in regards to Nolgrim?
Oh, you're can you repeat the question?
Yeah. When had Nolgrim actually become king, because Middlefinger's, that determination, right? How would have Freya's opinion or just mannerisms or behavior towards Nolgrim have changed?
Well, she probably wouldn't have merged our two organizations together because she genuinely thought Fergus was the one who united all of us. And she would have seen it as putting yourself over the greater good of Dammerhall.
Gotcha.
Which she's not into at all. If you couldn't tell by her immediate retirement.
Unrelated, Fergus would have made it his petty mission to really fuck with that one noble of Corsiconia that fucked him over with their verbal agreement. To the point he would have literally withheld he would have actually been petty enough probably to have withheld emergency treatment for his people if they were desperate needing of aid or something, that level of petty. Would have made him sign over land in order to help him, kind of petty. Listen, we've all established that Fergus is a very petty man.
Oh yeah.
And when you're king, you're, you gotta vent your express your
amounts of petty.
yeah, executive pettiness,
God, the ancestor temple trying to justify Fergus's complete crash out at the end, where he's like, "I just want to be buried at sea."
It's no problem. Taskell probably would have retired by that point.
Oh, he probably would have been dead by then.
Yep. The definition of dead, it's someone else's problem.
It's so weird how new words get created in your lifetime, man. Fucking crash out. That was always the thing you said. You wouldn't say it. It was fucking weird. Anyways, I'm getting derailed again, guys.
No, you're fine. You probably have to deal with that
That's
more
it. Cringe didn't always mean
school.
secondhand embarrassment. Yeah.
I have a question for Michael. When we came in to the game, Freya and Thrum and Taskell were very traditional. And I feel like by the end, and some of the things you've said tonight, Freya had changed at some point to support Fergus and his uniqueness. What would you say was the turning point for Freya?
I'm not sure there really was a turning point per se. I think she valued him more after getting fucking backstabbed by Jigglers for sure. But she always Freya was kind of, I played it as a weird middle ground between the traditional and the innovative parts of the Dwarven society. So she always respected the traditional aspects of the things Thrum said, but Is there some? Are you talking about
always learning more, right?
Yeah. Are you talking about when we like made all that stuff and like we're gonna get the bullets and we're gonna get the fucking sandworms and ba ba ba?
No, I mean
Actually,
like early on in the very initial exploration,
like book 1.
She was very racist dwarf with me, or with Thrum.
Oh, well, yeah,
And
that's all tied up in why she respected Fergus so much, because he challenged all of her preconceptions of the world, and they ended up working out for us in the end every single time. When she would have thought working with the elves is only, a way that's something that's going to get us backstabbed in the end. But in the end, the elves are actually good allies.
I like that. She was one of the ones who had, and we didn't discuss it much during the game, but clearly had an arc change throughout it from Thrum's perspective of, oh, I've got a young one who's on my team. She's a traditionalist. She hates the elves, and by the end it was, hell, Fergus the Elf King.
I was like, how much did Thrum actually hate the elves, though, considering you kept working with them with your druidness thing going on?
No, that wasn't the elves. Those were gnomes. Man, get your races right.
It worked out in the long run for like the way Fergus is. I played him and everything, but I mainly played him that way because I'm like, I actually, as a player, don't really like playing dwarves, and I was really hesitant going into this campaign. I'm like, oh, I have to play a dwarf campaign. I don't really want to, but whatever. I've been fooled before. I didn't really know anything about Dark Air, like Warhammer 40k, and I enjoyed that, so I'll give it a shot. But I don't actually like playing
play a traditional dwarf campaign, and we're gonna have a leader, and Richard was like, I'll be the leader, and I'm not gonna be a dwarf.
Honestly, I was all for that. I'm always a big proponent that every party needs to have at least one heal. That, like, not necessarily actively fighting against the party, but the one person who, when everyone else is nodding along in agreement, he's like, no, big stink out of this. Yeah. And it can always take different forms and do different things,
Are you stupid?
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I'm doing with Theobard, while at the same time you guys keep pushing him forward to be at the head of the group. I feel like that's kind of what Emmanuel was in Rise of the Rune Lords. Because it's not the same thing as being against the party, but it's a dynamic that's needed so everyone doesn't morph into a cohesive mass that constantly just nods along with each other.
Right.
And that's why when you said that you want to play Fergus as like a counterculture dwarf, I was all for that. Because if it made sure that you could have some fun, because I knew you weren't into dwarf stuff as much, and that could have the party heal, sounded like it was going to be a win to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was fine with trying it out, but like that's why I made the character the way I did, because I'm like, I would fail at making a traditional style dwarf anyway.
Oh yeah.
So might as well have fun with it. And I thought about it, I'm like, the idea of the heir being the least dwarfy dwarf is very fun.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun.
I always take a very.
I do like how when the Nolgrim revealed as brother thing, that gave Fergus the clear, oh, I don't have to be in this seat anymore. I could just go and nobody would think twice about it. And he opted to stay. I felt that was
he didn't opt to stay, just no one listened to Thrum. Why the hell didn't y'all hear what he was saying?
Well, technically speaking, with that new information, he could have just abdicated to Nolgrim, and it would have turned down to Nolgrim versus Tomas. That was an option.
In our game,
at that point, more than him being like 100% being.
And in our games, I'm always trying to pinpoint what's the difference between my character and the other character you are playing, and what's the same between my character and the other people. And then I really try to harp on that. And I feel like sometimes it makes me come off as really confrontational in these games, but also I feel like it makes things move along sometimes and makes things more interesting than. Yes,
it's a good way to look at it.
All very rational people who all know we need to do the quest to get the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to have someone who's like, yeah, we can do the quest to get the thing, but also you're a bitch.
Yeah.
Well, on the concept, us as players need to make a goddamn decision. We hesitate so damn long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of times it boils down to the one character in the party that's like, I'm just gonna do it and fuck everyone else's decision making.
That is something that I definitely think we need, as a cohesive group, need to work on. There's sometimes certain style plays it works for. I remember you guys doing that Dungeon Crawl Classics, Doom of the Savage Kings, and your guys' whole let's talk this out and figure out a complex solution. You just navigated through all the traps in that dungeon using teamwork and creativity. Because of that, I'm not just gonna run in and jump into the hole that probably has spikes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I always, after like a few minutes of arguing, I always think we should just put it down to a vote if we can't agree, and then just move it along.
But,
like I'm not saying no discussion, but we do it a little too long. I feel like sometimes.
We can always
like,
just.
I'm guilty of it too.
We can always just make it a point of just like typing
plans.
in ready into the chat.
Yeah, we
that
set
like
plans
put a timer for like 10
way
minutes.
too long.
Yeah.
We set
like,
plans
okay,
for
here's a
way
10-minute
too
timer.
long.
If you don't make a
It should
decision
just
by
be
then.
the stuff that we say out loud should be what we do. Like there's no coming back to it.
All right, I feel like there still should be room for planning, but
No,
definitely
no plans, only action.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that we'll plan for fucking 45 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. We need a timer.
Well, yeah. I think save room for timing because if you say and you do it, that could be very problematic very quickly.
And we're also everybody works so well together and is so nice in a group. Is that we'll all hear each other's ideas, and Kenneth's sitting back there in the background going, y'all have all just said the same thing 4 different ways. Let's fucking go. He won't say a word. But we'll listen to each one of us say it 3 different ways the same way.
But yeah, sometimes going and doing it yourself is a good way to get everyone started, but sometimes going and doing it yourself is how you get ambushed by flying enemies in the way of the wicked.
Yeah.
Or just like walking out of a place into the snowstorm and getting cleaved in half by a giant. That was just bad luck. I joke about
that
it.
really
That
was. It's like
yeah,
or
that was
you.
Like you got,
and
I think
then
you crit me and it did like such high damage. It just shot me from full health.
Yeah.
And you accidentally slide over and steal your companion's soul.
Oops.
Oops.
Who hasn't once or twice?
I got one more Dammerhall related question to ask you guys. Since it was just in the last session there. The reveal that Encephalon had a plan to use the army that you brought here. Was that how did that land? Because we kind of went from that straight to the boss fight, and I can't read facial expressions through a screen.
That was good in that he was using the mortals. It wasn't the dark iron army that we brought that we were all afraid that he was going to utilize. It was the fact that it was all the mortals that we had brought. That was a twist. That was nice.
Yeah. Like we all know he was gonna do something sacrificey, but it was a nice twist on it, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if that time really impacted so much because it was like the literal intro to the boss fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was like I said, I was worried we were bringing the black iron, and Cope reiterated that.
What was there a way to? Because I know we put a decent number of kingdom action swords, but was there a way to reassemble the souls from the black iron, or were you just kind of leaving that for how the role play went and how the rolls went?
It was kind of how the rolls went. I just set it for an absurdly high difficulty.
Right.
If you did, it just they would have dispersed because their souls are broken up, so it's not like they could go back to the afterlife.
Gotcha.
You could have, if you had done kingdom actions, just destroyed the black iron army entirely. It would have taken a long time, and you wouldn't know what happens to the soul fragments, but the threat posed by them would no longer be a thing.
And the soul fragments are with the elder gods now.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about how that'll possibly happen in the future.
That world's gone.
I was pretty happy with my ultimate sort of horrible thing from the thing flesh monster, even if the battle felt too easy. Part of that was the dice.
Yeah, no, dice were.
It didn't feel too easy. I mean, shit. Like three of us almost died, and then
okay, but
the
two
end
of you
threw
died
out a
fighting
9th level
Bedrak.
Yeah,
but there is a power difference between those levels, right?
Yeah, it is. I know.
There was a definite struggle, but yeah. I know you seem to be kind of frustrated with not downing us.
Oh, no. I wasn't actually frustrated. Sometimes what you do when you're trying to get in the headspace of the arch villain is you just kind of stay there a little bit. And if you're all like, damn, you're thwarting my plans. I think it's always important to remember in these games that while I want to challenge you and I want to give you a rewarding experience, I fundamentally want you to win. Like, I'm still on your side. You know,
I get that. I am. It's still way too easy for me to get into Albin's head. Where I answered with a paragraph to a yes or no question.
Remember that?
That was great. I love it. Is your favorite color green?
Typing continues.
Kenneth is typing. Green is a color, and on days it looks good.
On days that end with a Y, I would say I prefer it.
Today I feel.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan of green so much as I am a fan of the philosophical concept of green. Action, go, nausea.
And all the values it stands for.
It was Descartes that said, beans, the magical fruit, the more you eat, the more you too.
Yeah.
And many people mistake those for baked beans, but really, he was speaking of green beans.
Bringing it back to center.
Yes.
I mean, why else would they rhyme?
Anyway. In conclusion, yes, green.
The whole time y'all were just talking, I had to mute myself because I was laughing so hard I was hacking.
Oh, sorry.
And
Almost killed Coke.
I'm pretty sure I just lost half of my left lung. I will go now. Back to mute.
I think we're pretty much done with the recap of like post campaign.
Yep. Overall, I think it was a good campaign. I would like to say.
I thought it was good. Yeah. Again, going a little long is that's just the nature of sometimes making homebrew campaigns that you're not quite sure how long it's going to take, and then you over
years.
Yep.
Yes.
My eyes are too often too big for my stomach when I write these things from scratch. So I'm still learning as a DM. You know, we've been doing this for 10 years. That I said before, it's wild to think that this is only the second full length campaign I've ever run with you guys.
I have noticed in my experience, doing the adventure path did actually help me kind of gauge how long it would take to finish a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like the best benefit of running the official AP and Pathfinder for me was.
Yep. Because I learned from running Fistfuls of Flowers, the one shot for second edition. I'm like, okay, this is how you make a session that ends within an adventure that ends within one session. It's like two small encounters, tops, small story bridges. That's how you resolve into one.
Yeah, that's my takeaway from the Weepy Goblins. Was
I am looking for the delicious.
I kind of noticed that was about the max you could really get is and have one big combat or a couple small ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Combat just takes too damn long.
Yep.
Well, unless anyone else has any final observations, I think that's a good point in the prototype of closing the book.
Yep.
Good game, everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huzzah.
Okay. The next one will be shorter. I will attempt.
Almost promise.
What's
I
playing us out,
non-contractually guarantee.
Oh, I'll send Kenneth the audio file for the Dammerhall song. I had AI write and put that at the end.
Nice.
Did we ever do a AI written song for Middle Finger? Because I thought we were planning on doing like a.
There was a lyric. There was a lyric in the Dwarven Drinking song I had written.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, but I think that's